Welcome back to Cardano Sense. Today we're going to be talking about Voltaire and Project Catalyst. But before we get going, if you'd like to stay with me, I have a stake pool, Sophie, S-O-P-H-I, named after my daughter, and I also have an ADA address there. Okay, so let's get going here. So everyone's excited about Goguen now, right? Because Goguen has got the smart contracts, all that kind of stuff, but I'm pretty excited about Voltaire. I think Voltaire in the long run is going to be a lot more important. If this gets to where Charles wants us to be, we have 1 billion people. The voting to sustain this system and this ecosystem and kind of push it the way it's going to be going is going to be very, very important. So I want to get into this a little bit. We're not talking about it too much. So this article here is written by Bingsheng Zhang. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He also wrote the academic paper about this, which we're going to look at that a little bit too. So today, we're not going to get in the weeds too much, but we're going to kind of dig into the voting system a little more than just kind of rushing the top of it. So here we go. IOHK has now applied Treasury mechanism capabilities in Project Catalyst, which combines research, social experiments, and community consent to establish an open democratic culture within the Cardano community. So it was talking about basically the voting mechanism coming up. With the rapid growth of blockchain technology, the world is witnessing the emergence of platforms across a variety of industries. Technological growth and maturity are essential for long-term blockchain sustainability. That's why someone has to support and fund growth and the system's enhancements. So in other words, as this moves completely away from IOHK and is just in the community's hands, there needs to be a way to take care of this, right? And that's what this funding mechanism is for. A democratic approach is an integral part of the blockchain ecosystem because it allows sustainability. Sustainability decisions to be made collaboratively without relying on a central government entity. In other words, everybody has a voice. Excuse me, I'm going to probably do some of my tea during this. My throat's a little bit dry. Long-term sustainability. To establish a long-term funding source for blockchain development, some cryptocurrency projects apply taxation, which is taking a percentage from fees or rewards, and accumulate them in a separate pool of Treasury. This is what Cardano does. Treasury funds can then be used for system development and maintenance purposes. In addition, Treasury reserves undergo inflation as the value of the cryptocurrency grows. This grants another potential source of funds. So essentially, you have the Treasury, which is taken a little bit off the top, right? A tax off the top when blocks are created. And then as, in this case, ADA grows and is worth more, that also increases the funds in the Treasury. Okay, let's get down to Cardano a little bit here. The paper on the Treasury system for cryptocurrencies, which we're going to look at here, introduces a community-controlled, decentralized, collaborative decision-making mechanism for sustainable funding of blockchain development and maintenance. This approach to collaborate intelligence relies on liquid democracy, a hybrid of direct and representative democracy that provides the benefits of both systems. So for anyone who doesn't know, a direct democracy is basically just you have your vote, right? You have one person. It's supposed to be one person, one vote, but in the sense here, you have a vote that's representative of how much ADA you hold. But we'll get into that. But basically, that's one person, and you get to vote for what you want. A representative democracy is when you decide on someone to represent you. That's what we have here in the United States, a representative democracy. So I'm in Connecticut, for example. We have 2 senators, so we vote on the senators. Those 2 senators go to Washington and then do a really bad job of representing us. But that's a representative democracy. So Cardano here has kind of combined both of them. Thus, for each project, a voter can either vote directly or delegate their voting power to a member of the community who is an expert on the topic. So we'll get into this a little more when we get into the actual paper. Okay. Now, these are the 3 different ways you can get funding into the Treasury, okay? right here with the dots here. Some newly minted coins being held back as funding, a percentage of stake pool rewards and transaction fees, additional donations or charity. Okay, so the second one is essentially a taxation, right? You're taxing. The third one is charity. The interesting one really here is the first one, because this is the first time I've seen in writing this method of getting money or coins into the Treasury. Essentially what they're saying is they're going to mint their own coins, not tax, but mint their own coins. So essentially have their own pool. So I'd be interested to see how they're going to do that. This is the first I've heard of this. But it's funny because it is in the other paper. But okay, let's keep going. So these are the three phases: pre-voting, voting, and post-voting. Each one is an epoch long. So you have the pre-voting, and that's when you can you get all your proposals in. That's when there's a committee. We're going to get into that, but there's a committee picked, and you have to sign up for voting too. We'll get into that. But that all happens in the pre-voting. They're each an epoch long, so 5 days long. Then the voting is an epoch long, and then the post-voting is epoch long, so 5 days each. The voting power is proportional to the amount of ADA someone owns. So, right, however much you have, you can vote with. The more ADA, the more influence in making decisions. As part of the liquid democracy approach, as well as direct yes/no voting, an individual may delegate their voting power to an expert they trust, representative, right? In this case, the expert will be able to vote directly on the proposal they regard as the most important. After the voting, project proposals may be scored based on the number of yes/no votes and be shortlisted. The weakest project proposals will be discarded. So they keep the strongest one and throw out the weakest one. Then shortlisted proposals can be ranked according to their score. The top ranked proposals will be funded in turn until the Treasury fund is exhausted. In turn means, the one with the most votes, second most votes. The strategy of dividing the decision-making process into stages allows reaching consensus on the priority of improvements. Initially, Cardano's treasury will be refilled from a percentage of stake pool rewards, ensuring a sustainable treasury source. That's what's happening now. That's the only way they're getting money now, as far as I know, is off a tax from the pools. I think it's 20%. It's also important to note that the treasury systems mechanism can be implemented on a variety of blockchains, not just Cardano. So this is interesting. So other blockchains can use this technology. So that's kind of cool. Ethereum Classic. Charles has some AMAs on this. He's trying to help Ethereum Classic. There's and he's trying to help. He wants to implement this type of voting because then you have money to kind of build the ecosystem. But there's some people that don't want him to do that. If you're interested in that, look at his past AMAs. There's like 3 or 4 that explain kind of what's going on. Okay, so let us now go to the paper. Okay, so this right here is a paper or a journal that was sent to a journal. Everyone talks about how Cardano publishes in technical journals. Well, this is one of the papers. A treasury system for cryptocurrencies enabling better collaborative intelligence. And you see on here again, Bingsheng Zhang, I hope I'm saying that right, was one of the authors here also. He also wrote the other, the paper we just wrote, or the clipping. Okay, not sure when this was written, but you can see here, this article is the full version of a paper that was accepted to appear in the NDSS, which I'm guessing is a journal, in 2019. So this is probably written in 2018. He did a video also, and I think that was 2018-17, so that's kind of when this paper was written, a couple of years ago. We're not going through the whole thing. We're just going to pick sections out here. There's some important sections. We're going to read through those. The core component of a treasury system is a decision-making system that allows members of the community collectively research some conclusions. The community collectively research some conclusions and decisions. During each treasury period, anyone can submit a proposal for projects to be finished. Due to the shortage of available funds, only a few of them can be supported. Therefore, the collaborative decision-making mechanism is required, which is this whole treasury system that we're talking about. A lot of this is technical stuff about why it's safe and you can't hack it and all that kind of stuff. You're more than welcome to read through this. I will leave the link down below If you want to read through all this, I didn't kind of want to go through this. Half the stuff I don't understand, and the other half will bore you to death. So I'm just trying to read the important stuff, and there's a couple key features that just kind of isn't publicly out there I want to get to. In our Treasury system, the voting power of a voter is proportional to the corresponding stake. We distinguish between the... Okay, this is interesting, so listen to this. We distinguish between the ownership of a stake and the ownership of the actual coin. Namely, the stake of the coin can be owned by a user other than the coin owner. This feature allows us to delegate the stake of a coin to someone else without transferring the ownership of the coin. So this, again, is how you're going to delegate to the experts. So you can be a stakeholder without holding or owning the coin. I thought about this in terms of pool operators and all the stake that we got, but obviously we'd have to get a hold of the people that are staking with us and see if they would let us use their vote, but they'd probably want to vote. So just a passing thought I had. Okay. A treasury system consists of iterative treasury periods. A treasury period can be divided into 3 epochs, right? Pre-voting, voting, post-voting. The pre-voting epoch includes 2 concurrent stages. This is interesting. The project proposing stage and the voter expert registration stage. In the project proposing stage, the users can submit project proposals asking for treasury funds. Okay, that's when you submit your proposals. Meanwhile, the interested stakeholders can register themselves as either voters and or experts to participate in the decision-making process by locking a certain amount of their stake in the underlying cryptocurrency. This is very interesting because what this is saying is that you have to register to even vote. So according to this, if you don't register in the pre-voting period, this is what it looks like, reads to me, if you get to that voting period, you just can't vote. So so that's kind of cool because that means hopefully 100% of the people that are registered will actually vote. But I thought that was interesting. So you just can't come in here in the middle of that voting period and say, oh, what's going on? I want to vote. You have to register. Let's see. The voting power is proportional to locked state. We know that. While the expert's voting power is proportional to the amount of voting power delegated to him. So we know that already. The voting's treasury. Okay, this is interesting too. The voter's treasury reward is proportional to his locked state. So we're going to go through this a little bit more and we'll read about it again. But evidently, you get a reward for voting. So I didn't know that. So you actually get a reward for voting, which is kind of cool. At the beginning of the voting epoch, there's a voting committee. Okay, there's a voting committee selection stage during which a set of voting committee members will be randomly selected from the registered voters who are willing to be considered for selection to the committee. The probability of being selected is proportional to the locked stake. After the voting committee members are selected, they jointly run a distributed key generation protocol to set up the election public key. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Generally, what it's saying is that there is a committee that gets voted on every voting period. So in that pre-voting stage, you have to you put in that you're good to be a committee member, and then you have a chance of being a committee member. It's that's how that works. But that's interesting too. I didn't know there was a committee that kind of took charge of the voting. Okay, so these again are the 3 different ways of getting money into the treasury. Taxation, haircut from the block reward, right? We talked about that. Minting new coins. Here's the minting new coins again. Coin minting represents perhaps the most sustainable funding source of the potential sources. I don't understand that because I would think that taxation haircut would be they call it / haircut would be just as sustainable because you're getting the taxes every epoch, just like you're getting, if you're minting, actually might be more sustainable, or if you don't mint a coin. So I don't know if I totally agree with that, but no, that's what it says. And the last one is charity. Now they say that you can't, basically what it says here is you can't rely on charities for obvious reasons. Okay, to ensure that the independency and unfair advantage caused by late submissions, we adopt a 2-stage project proposal scheme. So what they want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to have their project looked at is what they're saying here. In the first stage, the product owners post an encryption of their project proposals to the blockchain. At the end of the pre-voting epoch, at the beginning of the voting epoch, the voting committee of the previous Treasury period will jointly decrypt those project proposals. And the way I understand this is they decrypt them to make sure they're the same proposals, and they've had that chance, and then everyone gets kind of a chance to look at them during the voting proposal. The reason why it said the previous committee is because this is when the next committee is picked. So you still have that previous committee that has to do a little work here because the second committee hasn't been picked yet. I know that because I read through the rest of this stuff. Okay, so in order to register to be a voter, a stakeholder needs to submit a special voter registration. Again, you have to register to vote. You're just not automatically registered to vote. At the beginning of the voting epoch, the voting committee of the previous Treasury epoch jointly reveal the committee's seed. So essentially, I think what they're saying here is that the last committee kind of presents the new committee or says who the new committee is. Okay, there's not too much. Okay, this is the interesting one. So you're wondering how many proposals get cut and how many proposals get kept. Well, this is what this talks about. For each period, the voters' experts need to submit an independent ballot. The voter can either delegate his voting power to an expert or directly express his opinion on the project. Whereas the expert shall only vote directly for the project. In our prototype, we adopted the yes, no, abstain type of voting scheme. More specifically, after the voting, the project proposals are sourced based on the number of yes votes minus the number of no votes. Proposals that get at least 10%, only 10% of all votes of the positive difference are shortlisted, and all the remaining proposals are discarded. Shortlisted proposals are ranked according to their score, highest to lowest. Most yes votes goes on the top. And the top ranked proposals are funded in turn until the Treasury funds have been exhausted. So I was a little surprised by this. They only throw out the bottom 10% of the proposals. I was a little bit surprised by that. We'll see how that works. So this is, well, I'll just read it. Certain proportion, example 20% of the Treasury fund will be used to reward the voting committee members, voters, and experts. So 20% of the Treasury for that period is dispersed among the voters, committee members, and the experts. Note, this is where it explains the committee members having to do that extra work on the next voting process. Note that as the voting committee members are required to perform more actions in the next Treasury period, the reward will only be transferred after the completion of those actions at the end of the pre-voting epoch of the next Treasury period. So I thought that was interesting. So that's something that we also, or I didn't know about. I don't think it was kind of out there in the open. Okay, so this right here is just, I'm going to read all through that. A lot of this stuff is what we've already talked about. These are the different, headings proposals can go under. So marketing, technology adoption, development and security, support, organization, and management. They're pretty much self-explanatory. I'm not going to read through all of these. They have a general category that just kind of encompasses anything that doesn't fit under the other headlines. So I'm assuming the reason for this is probably to help with the proposals. You're probably going to want to propose under one of these categories. It should be noted that the given list of categories is not final, and Treasury deployment in cryptocurrencies will take into account the specific of a given solution based on its development effort. Okay, so essentially, if it doesn't fit into all these, you can still get it into get it in there under something different. It looks like the Treasury deployment could take into account. Yeah, so I think that's about all I wanted to go over as far as that goes. So let's recap just a couple of things here. So interesting, right? That you get paid or you get a reward for voting. It looks like the voting reward for the committee members, I think, is a little bit higher, and I think also with the experts, it did say that actually. I don't think I read that part, but it's proportional to the amount of ADA you have. So I think it's proportional to the amount of ADA that is delegated to the experts. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Now, again, this was a paper 3-4 years ago. It sounds like from the article that they're basically using the same paper, but they may have changed some of this in the time since this paper was written. I'm guessing they didn't change much because they took the time to do this, and it sounds like it's pretty well thought out. So a couple interesting things. You get paid. Experts, you delegate to experts, and you vote according to your funds, how much funds you have. So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you knew this stuff or this is new to you. I know in a couple days they're having a let's see if I can find it here real quick before I log off. They are having this input-output meeting. I will put the link down below. This is only if you watch this within the next 2 days. So other than that, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you next time around. Thanks.